Hey guys, what's up? It's Eric with Advanced Level Automotive. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another case study. Today we're looking at this 2014 Chevrolet Cruze. It's got the 4-cylinder 1.4 liter engine. This is a turbo. Now this car actually belongs to my little brother. He's saying that the check engine light is on and it's got a little bit of a hesitation whenever you go to accelerate. You guys already know how we do it. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we're in the vehicle. The engine is actually running at the moment. And if you take a look over here near the tachometer, you'll see that we have the check engine light illuminated. Hopefully you guys can see that. So I've got my scan tool here. We're gonna go ahead and click on trouble codes. And as you guys can see, we have 3 different codes stored in the ECM. Starting up here at the top, we have a P0324 knock sensor module performance. Then down here, we have a P0420 catalyst system low efficiency. Then down here, we have a P2097 post catalyst fuel trim system high. Now, I will say that my brother actually recently replaced the catalytic converter about 2 months ago. So if you guys take a look, we still have this P0420, and that code was the reason he replaced the catalytic converter. So that is something we need to take into account. This catalytic converter is pretty much brand new, and we still have this P0420, so there may be something more going on here. Now, what I like to do whenever I run across a vehicle that has multiple codes like this is I like to think of things as a cause and effect. Is it possible that one of these codes is causing these other codes to get set? That's really where my thought process is right now. And particularly, I want to focus on this P2097, this post catalyst fuel trim system high, because I believe what this is saying is that our downstream sensor is reading rich. So let me take a quick moment to pull up the code description and we'll see what this code is all about. Okay, so I found this website here that gives us a code description. Now, I already went through this. I don't want to bore you guys, but essentially this code is pretty much what I thought it was going to be. So again, the code description, P2097, post catalyst fuel trim system too rich. Essentially what it's saying is that our downstream rear O2 sensor is reading rich. And if we scroll down here, you can see we got some symptoms. You can see we have, of course, the check engine light is going to be illuminated, poor engine performance, decreased fuel economy. And then it gives us here common causes for the P2097. We could potentially have a clogged or leaking exhaust, or a problem with the O2 sensor or its circuits. So pretty straightforward. If we scroll down here, they got a little picture of the oxygen sensor downstream. Again, what this code is telling us is that this downstream sensor is reading a rich mixture, even though the upstream is probably reading normal, because at this point we don't have any other codes related to the fuel trims. So I guess what we need to figure out is whether or not we actually have a rich condition, or do we have a sensor that's just not reading properly? Okay, so we're back inside the vehicle. The next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and pull up some live data. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the front oxygen sensor and compare it to the rear one. So here we have our 2 data PIDs for the oxygen sensor. We have the heated O2 sensor 1 and 2. So we're going to go ahead and select both of these, 1 and 2. Then I think while we're at it, we're going to go ahead and select the fuel trims. We have the short term here and the long term fuel trim. Then we'll see if there's anything else here that we can take a look at. We could probably go ahead and add the mass airflow sensor. Okay, so we've narrowed down the screen to the data PIDs we want to focus on. And if you guys take a look at the fuel trims over here, you can see our long term is sitting somewhere around 14. So it is running a little bit lean at the moment. Our short term staying around 0 here. So yeah, we do have some lean condition happening here, though it has not set a code for it. But what I want to try to do next is I want to go ahead and raise the RPM up. I'm going to hold it somewhere around 3,000 RPM. Let me get up there. And then we are going to hold it steady right around 3,000. We're going to take a look at the fuel trim numbers and we're going to see what happens here. So if you guys look, you can see we're counteracting here. We have -11, -12, and so that's zeroing out. So it definitely looks like we have some type of vacuum leak, because when we have the RPMs up at 3,000, the fuel trim numbers do get better. And then again, I'm going to let off, take a look at the idle, wait for this thing to come down. And you guys can see at idle, we've got about 10 on the long term. And well, it's staying close to around 0 here on the short term. So yeah, again, just a little bit lean, not really something I'm too concerned about. But let's go ahead and take a look at the mass airflow sensor. You guys can see we're at 1.8 grams per second, which is normal. Again, this is a 4-cylinder 1.4 liter engine. So 1.8 grams per second sounds about right. I want to go ahead and focus on these 2 data PIDs for the oxygen sensor. So I'm going to go ahead and deselect the rest of them. Then I'm going to go ahead and merge them into a graph. Okay, so if you take a look at the graph, You'll see the blue line up here, that's going to be our upstream O2 sensor, and this green line down here, that's our downstream. Now immediately what you'll notice is that our upstream oxygen sensor is switching like it's supposed to. So you'll see it go from 0 to 1 volt, switching like it's supposed to. But if you take a look at bank 2, which is the green line here, it's pretty much just flatline. Now, one other thing I wanted to add is that this vehicle still uses a conventional style cubic zirconia O2 sensor for the upstream. This does not use an air fuel ratio sensor, which, if you ask me, seems a little bit odd because this is a 2014 vehicle. You would think that by this time they would have switched it over to an air fuel ratio sensor, but it's still using the old school switching type. No big deal. Plus, it makes it a little bit easier for us to diagnose. I kind of like the system better. So again, focusing on this flat line down here, what I want to do is I want to verify whether or not this oxygen sensor is even responding at all. Now, there's actually a couple different ways we can do this. You know, we could inject propane into the intake to see if we get a response from this downstream sensor. But one really quick thing that you can do without having to get out of the vehicle is actually just to blip the throttle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my foot to just floor the accelerator for a moment and let off. And what that's going to do is that's going to induce a quick lean condition in which the sensor is going to respond, and then it's going to have a rich condition, and we should see that movement on this bottom sensor here. So I'm going to go ahead and blip the throttle body. You guys hear that? And you can see right there, our voltage went up all the way up to close to about 1 volt. It went down, went back up again, went down, and now it's just pretty much flatlined again. Let me go ahead and blip it again. There we go. Again, you can see where I hit the accelerator. It went down, it came back up. And again, it looks like it's just flatlining. So to me, it does look like this oxygen sensor is responding. I guess we could see what happens whenever we hold it at a higher RPM. So I'm going to go ahead and get up to, let's say, 2,500 RPM. Right around there. I'm going to hold it steady, and let's take a look at the graph here. Again, you guys can see the initial throttle there, but it's pretty much just flat line. You can see the frequency increase on that upstream sensor, but we're pretty much just flat lined here. Now, the other odd thing about this is that our code is saying that our downstream sensor is reading rich. But if you look at this, you know, we're flatlined down at the bottom close to 0 volts. That's an indication that it's reading lean, not rich. So I'm wondering why it would set a code for this downstream sensor to be reading rich when in fact we're looking at it right now and the voltage is low rather than the voltage being high. No big deal. I'm not going to worry too much about it. You know, sometimes we just don't have an explanation for why one code gets set versus it setting a different code. But right now, I think what I'm going to focus on is trying to figure out why we're showing a lean condition on this downstream sensor. Again, one of our possibilities is that we could have an exhaust leak. And to be honest with you guys, I think that was one of the first things that I noticed when I started up the vehicle, is that it does sound like it has an exhaust leak. Let me take you guys outside and let you listen. Okay, so moving under the hood. I don't know if you guys are going to notice it on the camera, especially because right now my neighbor is actually mowing his lawn. But if you guys listen really closely, you can hear what sounds like an exhaust leak. Hopefully the microphone is picking that up. And again, like I said, my brother actually just recently replaced the catalytic converter, so that is one of my concerns there, is whether or not we might have an exhaust leak here. So I think the next thing I want to try to do is I want to smoke test the exhaust and see if we can find an exhaust leak. Okay guys, so let me show you what I'm working with. So I got my smoke machine right over here. You can see it's connected to the compressed air. And right over here I have my battery pack that I'm using to power up the smoke machine. And right over here we have the hose. Now I do have an adapter that goes into the tailpipe right here, but I actually misplaced it. So what I'm going to use is just a funnel. So we're gonna go ahead and stick that into the exhaust pipe. I'm gonna go ahead and slide this in there. Make sure we have a nice tight seal. Then I'm gonna go ahead and push this button on the top of the smoke machine. You'll see it turns red, and we should have smoke coming out of this in just a second once it heats up. There we go, we got smoke coming out. So I'm gonna go ahead and shove it into the funnel here. Now we're gonna let the exhaust system fill up with smoke and see if we can find a leak. Okay, so first of all, let me apologize for the bad camera angle. I had to crawl up underneath the vehicle. There was not a whole lot of space. But as you guys can see, I was able to locate where the leak was coming from. What we're looking at here is where the catalytic converter meets the downpipe. And you can see that we have a leak where this 3-bolt flange is. So obviously the first thing we need to try to do is replace this gasket and see if that fixes our leak. Okay guys, so I went ahead and I installed the new gasket. As you can see, I got everything bolted back together. This is the old gasket right here, and you can see that it's got this kind of blacked out area right here. Looks to me like that's probably where the exhaust leak was happening. Now, I will say that these bolts were pretty loose. I don't think that my brother really tightened them down like he was supposed to. And plus, he put the locking washers on the wrong side. But, you know, I'm not blaming him. I went ahead and I tightened it down. So let's go ahead and move back inside the vehicle and check out the scan tool. Okay, guys, so we're back inside the vehicle. The engine is running and it's idling. And take a look at this graph here. You can see that both sensors are now working. You can see our downstream sensor is switching properly. Again, our downstream was this green line. If you guys remember, before we replaced that gasket, this was pretty much flat line down here at the bottom. You can see all this activity now we have. You can see it's slowing down here. Once the engine's warmed up, you can see that both of the sensors are switching like they're supposed to. But if any of you guys know what the downstream sensor should look like and why I'm worried about what the signal looks like right now, because again, you guys remember we have a P0420 code, which was a catalytic converter. And of course, the way the computer sets that code is that it's comparing the upstream and the downstream sensor, because there should be a delay that's happening between the switching of the upstream sensor to the downstream sensor. Now, if you guys look, I mean, we're almost pretty much exactly the same. So when the blue line is going up, you'll see the green line going up. We have these humps that are pretty much almost matching. They're just too close in time. Really what we want to see is much more of a delay on this green line. So we should have some switching. You know, for every 2 to 3 humps of the blue line here, you should see 1 hump of this green line. Hopefully you guys understand what I'm trying to explain, but essentially when the downstream sensor is switching at the same rate that the upstream sensor is, you know, that's an indication that the catalytic converter just is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. In other words, it's not converting the gases like it should. It's not storing the oxygen like it should. So you can think of it pretty much like the air that's coming in is the same air that's coming out. And that's exactly what we're showing on the graph. The same air that's coming in on this blue line here is the same air that's coming out on this green line here. So we fixed a problem. We fixed that P2097 because now we have switching going on with this downstream sensor, but I'm still worried that we're gonna have a problem with this P0420. Now the P0420 code, for a lot of you guys that don't know, of course, it means the catalyst efficiency below threshold. Means exactly what it says. The catalytic converter is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. It's not converting the gases. And it is one of the very few codes that I like to say is one of those codes that it is what it is. I mean, the computer is looking at the front O2 sensor, it's looking at the rear one, it's comparing the two, and if it sees that they pretty much are sharing the same frequency, it's going to set that code. So at this point, I'm pretty sure that he's gonna need to replace the catalytic converter again. Hopefully he can get this thing warrantied out. But I think what I'm gonna do right now, since we solved this problem with the P2097, is we're going to clear the codes and we're going to drive it and we're gonna see if that P0420 comes back. My guess is that it does. There's a high probability of it, but there is a chance that maybe us fixing that exhaust leak may have done something to maybe improve the signal. Hopefully the computer sees this and is okay with it. But I mean, at this point, I just don't know. I wish I had more of a solid answer for you guys, but again, the P0420 code, it is what it is. Looking back at the scan tool real quick, I wanted to address something, and that is the fuel trim. So if you guys take a look here at the long term and the short term, you can see we're kind of more in a normal range than we were before. So if you guys remember before, you know, we were looking at like 15 on the high end. And if you look now, we're at 8 on the long term, and we're kind of showing a negative here, kind of jumping back and forth. But it seems that the fuel trims have gotten better during idle. Now, I don't know if that has anything to do with us fixing the exhaust leak. It is possible. I mean, generally, people will tell you, and textbooks will tell you that the downstream O2 sensor does not affect the fuel trim values. But I will tell you, I have seen it on some particular vehicles, specifically a Nissan that I had, where the downstream sensor was directly affecting the fuel trim values. So I wouldn't be surprised if, because our downstream sensor was reading lean all the time, it was directly affecting or indirectly affecting the fuel trim values. Okay guys, so while we're at it, one of the things I'm gonna do real quick is I'm gonna go into special functions here, and I'm going to go into reset functions. We're going to reset the fuel trim value. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow this thing to relearn the fuel trims and get them back to where they need to be. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit reset. And now it's zeroed out, so we can go ahead and back out. One other thing that I'm gonna do while I'm here is a quick cam and crank relearn, or this crankshaft position variation learn. I'm gonna go ahead and click on this. Now this is something that's oftentimes overlooked, but I found that a lot of times this can solve some drivability problems that you might have. And if you guys recall, we do have a code P0324 for the knock sensor. Now, I really hadn't looked into this yet, but you know, as far as simple things we can do just to be preventative and also make sure that this thing is running in top shape, this is right there at the top. This is something quick and easy that we can do. So again, I'm going to go ahead and hit OK here. Now it wants us to accelerate. Learn in progress, test passed successfully. So we have now done the cam and crank relearn. So we can go ahead and go back to the live data, because what I want to do is I want to take a look at the data PIDs for the knock sensors. So I'm going to come over here for the ignition, click on this. If you look right over here, we have the knock retard. We're going to go ahead and select that. There's also a total knock retard. We'll do that. And the nice thing about this one is that it actually gives us individual cylinders. Even though there's only one knock sensor, it does give us individual cylinders on the data PIDs here. So we have cylinders 1 through 4. And I guess we can go ahead and throw in the engine timing while we're at it. So I'm going to go ahead and narrow the data PIDs down to this. You guys can see everything right now looks pretty normal. The engine is idling. We have no here that's showing us that we're not detecting any knock throughout the cylinders. We don't have any knock retard. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and raise the RPM up and kind of go through the RPM band. Now, it might actually be normal to see a little bit of movement here. But, you know, what we don't want to see is something that's happening excessive. I think what the computer is looking at is it's looking to see if there's any knock that's happening for a certain amount of time. So let's say if the threshold is like 10 seconds, you know, it wants to see that there's knock occurring for at least that certain amount of time before it actually sets a code. So again, I'm just kind of raising the RPM here. I think I'm somewhere around 2,800. I'm going to get up to 3,000. You guys can see we don't have any activity. I'm going to get up to around 4,000. Kind of see a little bit of activity there. Right now I'm at around 3,200. So I don't see anything excessive. I'm going to go ahead and let off. Of course, during the decel you might see some, but we don't show anything excessive. Now, what I want to try to do at this point is I'm going to go ahead and clear the codes and take this thing for a pretty extensive test drive. And I want to see if this code actually comes back. Because again, you know, we're not really sure if we fixed it. You know, it's possible that after fixing the issues with the fuel trims, with the exhaust leak and whatnot, you know, we may have affected this. So it is possible that we may have fixed the problem. I'm not really sure, but there's really only one way to find out. But before I go on a test drive, I do want to take you guys under the hood to show you something that I think might be worth taking a look at. Okay guys, so moving back under the hood, what I wanted to show you guys is that if you listen closely, I don't know if you guys are picking it up on the camera here, but if you look at this tensioner down there, you see that spring that's jumping up and down? Yeah, that thing is rattling a lot. So if you look at the top of it, you can see that whatever that is on that spring tensioner has come loose. And so I will say that, you know, I am kind of concerned that this tensioner might be resonating some noise through the engine, because right now I don't hear any knocking while the engine is idling or while it's running, but I do hear this rattling. So I am concerned that the tensioner might need to be replaced, and maybe that there's a small possibility that it could be setting off our knock sensor, because again, like I said, if it's loud enough, it's going to resonate through the engine block. The knock sensor is going to pick that up. It's going to detect it as knock. It's going to set the check engine light, maybe retard the engine timing, cause performance issues. So, you know, I think at this point, that's just something I'm going to keep in the back of my mind. I mean, this obviously needs to be replaced anyway. You can see how it's just jangling around there. So, you know, that's going to be next up on the list, but I'm going to go ahead and take this thing for a test drive and see if our codes pop back up. All right, guys, so I've been driving for about 30 miles now. As you guys can see, the check engine light just came on. Sorry, it's dark outside now, but yeah, the check engine light is on. Let me take you guys over to the scan tool and show you guys what I was watching. Okay, so you guys can see the data PIDs that I was watching while I was driving. Essentially what I was watching were the knock sensor data PIDs, looking to see if there was any excessive activity. And I'll tell you right now, it actually looked pretty good while I was driving. So let me show you guys. Right now we're at a standstill. I'm going to go ahead and start accelerating, and we're going to get up to cruising speed and just watch those data PIDs. I mean, you'll see a little bit of activity, but nothing excessive. So the vehicle is moving at the moment. We're up to 25 miles an hour. Let me get up to 35, 40 miles an hour at the moment. And we're cruising at about 40 miles an hour right now. I'm coming up to a stoplight, so I'm gonna slow down. Okay, so judging by the data PIDs and what I saw, I really doubt that this check engine light is gonna be for the knock sensors because again, we didn't see any excessive movement or excessive activity from the knock sensors. We saw a little bit, but that's probably normal. What I'm thinking is that it's more than likely the check engine light came on because of the catalytic converter. If you guys recall, we had a P0420 before, and I was worried that that code was gonna come back because of the activity that we saw from the downstream O2 sensor. So let me take you guys over to the scan tool and let's see what code we have. Okay, so here we are at the scan tool once again. I'm gonna go into the trouble codes and let's see what we got. Bam, P0420. What did I tell you guys? I was pretty sure that this code was gonna come back because again, that downstream O2 sensor was showing a lot of activity and it was pretty much mirroring or showing the exact same thing that the upstream sensor was showing. So at this point, I don't think there's any way around it. It's going to need a replacement catalytic converter. Anyways, guys, I'm gonna end out the video here. I'm just hoping you guys were able to pick up some useful information, maybe to help you guys diagnose something. Maybe if you're working on the same vehicle, running into the same problem. Now, I wasn't able to give you guys complete answers to certain things. Of course, I'm gonna keep you guys updated on what goes on with this vehicle. We'll see if our engine knock code comes back. Also the catalytic converter, we're gonna go ahead and replace it. And I'm gonna give you guys a before and after, so look forward to seeing a video about that. Anyways, like I always say, thank you guys for watching. I hope you found it useful. I hope you found it informational. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.